Yeah, and you're still you're still part of the 5%ers. You're still like that's a derivative
still a
of the Nation of Islam. So and then
that's my culture.
That originated in New York as well. Why is it so prominent in hip hop? My theory is because the 5%ers feel a great deal of responsibility for being in a position to affect so many, that they can do a lot of good by reminding young blacks about the rich cultural heritage that was erased from their ancestors during the slave trade. So when I hear Q-Tip rhyme, Zulu Nation, brothers, that's creation, I hear that as giving a little history lesson of their place in hip hop and kind of acknowledging their predecessors.
The history of hip hop and the history of the 5% Nation were same place, same time. Allah was, he left the mosque in 64 and was killed in 69. And one of the last things he said was, if you ever want to see me, all you have to do is get together, because he knew something was going down. The legacy that he left was powerful enough to basically thrive through the 70s when hip hop was flourishing. So when you talk about the B-boy stance, and I talk about, 5%ers being on that square with, their right hand over their left hand standing straight up. When you talk about, and word is bond, and I talk about the 5% degree that's, word is bond and bond is life, and I'll give my life before my word shall fail, you realize just how synonymous 5% culture and how ingrained and immersed 5% culture was in hip hop, just because it was the cool thing. You had all of these cats, in their teens and their 20s going around, going to parties, going to clubs, being, the life of the party, the leader of the pack, and speaking this language that was based on, the Islamic teachings of Elijah Muhammad and W.D. Fard and this whole nation of black empowerment. And like you said, a derivative of that in the streets with a street language, with street charisma, being in the middle of this artistic period that would shape and change music forever. You know what I mean? Music, art, culture, visual art, dance, fashion. It's right there. When you talk about the 5%'ers influence on hip hop, you're talking about a very rich history that, people don't even know unless they're immersed in that culture, but they're going to recognize because they're immersed in the culture of hip hop.
As someone from Texas, it was very jarring because whenever I hear Sean Price rap, I didn't know why he kept referring to himself as the God.
Yeah.
And they refer to their members as gods, which is completely diametrically opposed to everything Islam teaches.
Well, that's the thing. You see, the 5% is not a religion. We are not Muslims. We are not, we do not submit to the will of Allah. It's more of a taking the tenet.
Are you heretics?
No, it's taking the tenets and the pillars and the principles of Islam and approaching them from a secular scientific basis, to where, imagine if like all right, for example, you can be Jewish and not religious, right? You can be born into a Jewish family, but not practicing Judaism. But your culture and your language and your vocabulary, there's still a great many things about them from Judaism. You know what I'm saying? In terms of your language, you might speak Hebrew and not be religious at all. So a 5%er is sort of, I was like, whenever I talk to religious studies, teachers or students, I call it secular Islam. And that's the reason why you have to make that distinction between a Muslim and a 5%er, because to be a 5%er is blasphemous. You can't really be in that same space, because you're not talking about a theology at all. You're talking about recognizing or the founding idea of my culture is that belief is the absence of knowledge, and knowledge is the foundation, not belief. So the faith is limited to oneself.
That would be the nation of gods and earths. It would be,
Exactly, the 5% nation. So, but you're sitting right there adjacent to actual Muslims and actual traditional Islam and theological and religious Islam, but it's not that. It just so happens it was born out of that. there was a man that basically said, okay, so you're telling me that I'm God. Okay, well, tell you what, I'm going to call myself God and practice it on a cultural level. Oh, I can't do that here? Okay, fine. I'm going to do it elsewhere. I'm going to leave now. And there you have it. That's the difference between the Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation, is you have a brother, basically the Nation of Islam teaches that you are God, but you are not Allah. And Allah said, you know what? I'm not going to make that distinction. The way I see it, I'm God Allah, and I'm going to take on the name of Allah, and my sons are going to take on the last name of Allah as a family name, and we're going to be the nation of gods and earths, and we're going to do things this way. And that's basically where the distinction lies. So that's why there's a mutual respect between the Nation of Islam and the 5% Nation, because on many levels the agenda is similar, but that fundamental difference makes all the difference in the world.
Man, I appreciate that, man, because I was a little naive on the subject, and I could have asked someone like Lord Jamar, but I feel like he would just yelled at me. So I'm glad you took the time to